Our task as citizens, whether we are leaders in government or business or spreading the word, is to spend our days with open hearts and open minds, to seek out the truth that exists in an opposing view, and to find the common ground that allows for us as a nation, as a people, to take real and meaningful action. And we have to do that humbly, for no one can know the full and encompassing mind of God, and we have to do it every day, not just at a prayer breakfast.
President Obama at this year's prayer breakfast on the search for common ground. We're going to take up that challenge now, discuss the role of religion in our civic debates with a distinguished panel of scholars and pastors. Sojourners President Jim Wallis, author of a brand new book, On God's Side. Author and atheist Susan Jacoby. Her new book, The Great Agnostic on Robert Ingersoll, is out soon. Islamic scholar Reza Aslan. Reverend Calvin Butts of New York's Abyssinian Baptist Church. And Dr. Richard Land, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. Welcome to all of you. Happy Easter to those of you celebrating. And Jim, let me begin with you. I read your book this week, and you are a political activist, a preacher, and a writer, but you took some time off during the last election and saw politics as a spectator, and you write that a lot of the motivation for this book came out of your depression from watching our politics.
I wrote the book on sabbatical, so every day I'd write and pray and read and study. At night I watched the news cycle, and it was depressing. And I realized we'd lost something very important. It's an ancient idea called the common good. And it says we can't just take care of ourselves and our party and our side. We've got to take care of each other and our neighbor. And that is the foundation for all of it. That's the common good. It's in our religious traditions. It's in our secular democratic traditions. This common good idea, I think, could bring us back together. And I see that happening.
But it comes at a time when we have more polarization than ever, it seems, in our politics. You and Richard Land probably have a polar opposite politics. I say that on most issues, yet you have come together, at least on
immigration,
on the issue of immigration. So how does that work?
Well, I think, first of all, when you're looking at issues of the common good, Jim's a Christian, I'm a Christian. We may have different emphases and different perceptions of parts of Scripture, but we both understand that there's a difference between the authority of Scripture and our understanding of Scripture. And we have to be humble about our understanding of Scripture. And we both agree that immigration reform is tearing the social fabric of the country. It needs to be done. The lack of doing it is causing havoc that will be difficult to repair in the social fabric of the country. And there is a way to do it, and a way to do it that's fair, and a way to do it that will heal the country. And so we found that evangelicals and Catholics and Orthodox and Jews and Muslims, people all across the religious spectrum, and people of no particular faith, have come together in what I think is a pretty impressive coalition to say that it's time for our leaders to stop acting like politicians who are concerned about the next election and start acting like statesmen who are concerned about the next generation and get comprehensive immigration reform done.
And Dr. Butts, you actually have a similar but opposite experience with another major issue in the news this week, gay marriage. Your normal political allies have been strongly supportive of gay marriage, yet it's something that your faith does not believe in.
Well, it's something that we don't believe in terms of what we learn from the Bible, but in terms of men and women having their rights as citizens and human beings, we certainly affirm that. You should have every right as a citizen of this nation and every right as a human being to enjoy the freedom that we believe God has given you. The choice is yours, and I should not stand in the way of you making that choice. However, I have to extol what I believe my religion teaches, and it does not teach that a marriage between a man and a man or a woman and a woman is God's divine imperative. But I can't stand in the way of that, and I think that the Supreme Court should not stand.
And so that's a place where you have a strict separation between what you practice inside your church and what you believe should happen in the public school.
Well, I have to support that in the civil society, because otherwise I would not be a good citizen of our great nation and a participant in this great experiment in democracy. However, I choose to believe the book upon which I build my life.
I assume some of that is music to your ears. You wrote a fascinating article with Susan Jacoby in the New York Times coming out of Newtown called The Blessings of Atheism. And one of the things you write about is that atheists and non-believers often feel intimidated from speaking out on public issues as atheists.
I think we heard almost nothing, and no secular chaplain, a person representing a secular organization, asked to be at the Newtown ceremony. I asked several of them about it, and they were kind of afraid to. They felt that it would be taken the wrong way, as if atheists were trying to horn in on this ceremony, which was basically religious. And let me say, what Dr. Butts said is music to my ears. If all religious people trying to influence politics could separate what they teach and preach in church, and which, of course, every religious institution and person has the right to state their convictions on, just as I do. But the problem is, Newtown was a perfect example of it. There were people sitting in that audience. Obviously, if we believe the polls, that 20% of people don't belong to any church, and some of those people are atheists and some of them aren't. It's hard to tell because atheist is still quite a pejorative. But when President Obama, unlike some atheists who are sitting here, some would tell you they objected to his mentioning religion at all at that service, which I think is ridiculous. There were a lot of religious people there. Religion is a solace for religious people in grief. But he could very easily have expanded that to say whether we are religious or non-religious. He could have said that we are all united in our grief and not made it exclusively. And he should not have been talking about Jesus Christ when some of the parents who lost children are people who don't believe in Jesus.
Well, and he often has done that. And he even did that in the National Prayer Breakfast, talked about non-believers. And that is the fastest really growing group, people who are not affiliated with any particular religion right now in the United States. I want to talk about that more in a minute, but first let me bring in Reza, Aslan as well, because I want to get you to respond to a notion that Jim brings up in his book when he was talking about the rise of Islamophobia, which you have also written about, the need to surprise our enemies with acts of goodwill and grace.
This is a fact. Anti-Muslim sentiment in this country is at unprecedented levels. About 2/3 of Americans believe that Muslims shouldn't have the same First Amendment rights as other Americans. About 1/3 of Americans believe that Muslims should be forced to carry special IDs that identify them as Muslims. That's 100 million Americans who believe that. Now, the important thing is, and Jim will tell you this, that this isn't Christian or Jewish-based Islamophobia. This Islamophobia has much more to do with certain right-wing fringe groups that have managed to enter into the mainstream. The tragedy, however, is that Jews and Christians, particularly Jews and Catholics, who have dealt with this exact kind of xenophobia and bigotry in this country in the past, have not been the groundswell for standing up against Muslims in this country. Jim, of course, has been one of the leading voices condemning Islamophobia. But the important thing for, I think, religious communities, regardless of where you pray or how you worship, is that we have to recognize that all peoples in this country have a right to worship as they please, to believe as they please. And if we don't stand up for each other, then we are not actually being true to the values of our own faith.
And that gets to the point of, it seems like so much of this search for common ground, Jim, is about how we practice our politics.
The largest affiliation now growing in the country is none of the above, a lot of young people. And what I find is when people from the faith community, when religious people do what their religions say and say what they say, two things happen. People are surprised, and then they're attracted. I wrote this book to hope to spark a national conversation on the common good. It's in all of our traditions and secular as well. The common good is the right question. It's about what does it mean to love our neighbor as ourselves? That's the golden rule. And that's the foundation for the common good. Who is my neighbor becomes the question here. And once we apply that to the economy, the role of government, to democracy, even to our households, how we live as parents and moms and dads and kids, I think this common good framework could change our politics.
But a lot easier on applying it to our households, taking personal responsibility, than when you try to translate those principles into actual public policy.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I think, look, you can disagree without being disagreeable. you know, and as Christians, we're commanded to love our enemies, not just our neighbors, but our enemies. And, you know, we can stand up for our convictions without demonizing those who are opposed to us, or those who disagree with us. That's what's supposed to be what America's about. We're supposed to be able to disagree and respect each other's personhood and respect each other's dignity and agree that you know, one of the wonderful things about this country is no issue is forever settled. If we don't like the way the issue is settled now, we can come back and make a better argument in the next election.
Yet it seems, Dr. Butts, that is the first thing lost, that kind of civility in the heat of a political campaign, or any day you get online and see all the hateful political comments.
Well, that's often because people do not practice what they preach. And it is difficult to translate your religious belief into public policy. I think what you have to do, and one of the things I'm eager to do with Ms. Jacoby, for instance, is to apply our ideas, our thoughts, our ideologies in the marketplace. I mean, the great Apostle Paul went to Mars Hill, and he argued there for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he won people to his side. But then you hear the arguments for the unknown God, or the God that is denied, or the God that is rejected or not believed. But there are things that come out of this discussion that are helpful to both.
Do you feel a need to proselytize?
The need to proselytize in the sense that I want to convert people to atheism? No, the mission, if you could call it that, of the atheist is not to convert people. It is to put forward our ideas in the public square, and we have had some success. And I'm not talking only recently, but over 100 years, to talk about the importance of science and reason in public policy. And there are many religious people who believe in that, but there are many religious people who are opposed to fact and evidence-based thinking. And here's the point about the problem with religion and politics. It's not that religious groups shouldn't have an active role in presenting their viewpoints, as we all must. It's that all public policy has to have a rationale that goes beyond the religious. Because saying, for example, gay marriage is wrong because my God tells me so, or a certain kind of immigration policy is wrong because my God tells me so, or was in the past, slavery is right because the Bible upholds slavery. And as we well know, religion was just as much on the side of slavery in America as other. There is no such thing as religion. There are only certain kinds of religion. And how often it is when people say, well, this needs to be in public policy because God says so.
And there's also the problem
how much God sounds like our own voice,
of
really.
Religious extremism. And of course, we have to confront that in the Islamic world so often. One of the other things that Jim writes is that it's important the best way to fight that is by undermining it from the inside, not trying to smash it.
That's right. And this goes back to the conversation that we've been having. We have to recognize that religion is often more a matter of identity than it is a matter of beliefs and practices. Certainly beliefs and practices are important, but it's about who you are as a human being, how you see yourself in an indeterminate world, your relationship to God. I'll give you an example. The latest Pew poll says 7 out of 10 Americans identify as Christian. Now, think about this for a moment, gentlemen and ladies. Does that mean 7 out of 10 Americans go to church on Sunday, or that 7 out of 10 Americans read the Bible regularly, or that 7 out of 10 Americans can tell you anything about Jesus except that he was born in a manger and died on a cross? No, the vast majority of that 7 out of 10 is actually making a statement of identity. And as a statement of identity, it encompasses your politics, your economic views, your social views, your worldviews. It's not just about what you believe, it's how you understand the world around you. So, of course, religion is going to have a role in politics in the world. And yes, it's problematic, as Susan says, because religion is often about absolutes and politics is about compromise, or at least it's supposed to be about compromise. Yeah. But what Jim was saying is absolutely correct. So how do we then counteract the negative effects of religion? Not by excising it from society, not by removing it from politics, but by making sure that those voices of moderation, those voices of pluralism, those voices that are dedicated to what America stands for, rise above the voices of extremism.
Embedded in a Christian value, Jim, humility.
Well, in fact, the problem with religion is a quote from Lincoln that I put right in the cover of the book. He says, "My concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side. And that flips the question. And that leads us to that kind of humility, to ask how we change our views, our values, our politics, our ideology. How do you move past the vitriol, the hatred in our media and politics, and find what's right and what works on immigration, on gun violence, and so many issues? If we could come together and get beyond left, don't go right, go deeper. What does that mean?
We want to go deeper. I wish we had more time to do it today, but I want to have you all back because it's a fascinating conversation. Happy Easter to all of you.